Well, good day and welcome to another episode of Commerce Today. My name is Darren Newbold, and as always, our host with the mostest, Joshua Warren, and we're going to be talking about election year e-commerce playbook, winning in the 2024 high-stakes holiday season.
Yeah, so Darren, I figured what the internet really needs right now is two guys sitting around talking about politics in the election.
Outstanding.
Just not enough of that, right? No, I want to take a very e-commerce specific look at this, and a lot of that is because I'm realizing that the 2024 holiday shopping season is a really unique one. So we have a lot of early shopping trends. We have inflation. We also have the shortest possible time between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
I saw that.
Yeah. 16% of consumers actually started shopping in June. So we're behind. And of course, e-commerce is expected to grow almost 10% year over year this year. So it's going to be a good season, but it is going to be challenging, especially because the presidential election obviously is the first week in November, and that's going to have some interesting implications on your ad strategies.
I'm sure it will. I thought I saw some holiday decorations and stuff already in the stores by June. But anyway, you mentioned the election. We know that that's going to be a significant challenge and what that looks like. But first and foremost, the big thing that really caught my eye was this is the shortest holiday season. And I didn't realize this. So you have educated me, Josh, on what you're going to talk about here.
Yeah, and you probably didn't even notice last year. Last year was one of the longest possible. So basically, the time from Thanksgiving to Christmas could be anything from 27 to 33 days. Last year we had 32 days. This year we only have 27. And that, you're like, oh, what's the big deal? But the way I look at it is consumers are going to be busy because they're not just shopping. They're not just buying from you. They're going to holiday parties. They're planning their Christmas traditions. They're making their Christmas meals. They're sending Christmas cards. And last year they had 32 days to do that. This year they have 27, and that is going to really compress schedules. And I think that's going to show up in some really interesting ways. We're going to talk about later in the episode, but I think the way it's already shown up is that 16% of consumers that started back in June, and now over 60% say that they're going to start their Christmas shopping well before Thanksgiving.
I can only imagine. So what does this mean? The implications for e-commerce overall? I mean, are we going to is this going to be a blowout Black Friday and Cyber Monday?
You know, I think in previous years, that's what would have happened. But with everyone, when you look at even last year, the long holiday season, when you look at the numbers, people started early last year too. And people want deals. They want discounts. Retailers are responding, and they're offering deals and discounts even well before Black Friday. So I think if anything, Black Friday and Cyber Monday maybe less of a peak than they have been in past years. And I think we may see more shopping earlier in November, which does get dicey when you realize that's when the election is as well.
Well, so let's talk about, before we get to the election, we got to talk about the economy. So there's going to be economic factors that play in for sure. Kind of this ranges from sales projections and as well as overall spending patterns. So what are you seeing, Josh?
Yeah, so the holiday sales are expected to reach $271 billion, and we will, as always, have links to all the sources and all the numbers in the show notes. That's a 9.5% increase from last year. And what's really interesting with that is, we're still hearing all the talk of inflation. Hopefully it's cooling. Hopefully the Fed is going to do something with interest rates. We won't know for sure for another week or two, but seems that way. But consumers, 72% of them still say that inflation or the threat of inflation is influencing their spending decisions. And they've gotten so used to the discounts. We have spoiled consumers. And so not only does everyone expect discounts, I blame Amazon and Prime Day for the fact that flash sales are out. Consumers do not trust flash sales anymore. They don't trust one-day sales events. They don't trust all these, kind of trickier discounts that some brands like to do. 60% of shoppers surveyed said that they just want a clear, simple percentage off sale. And that really, if that discount isn't at least 30%, they're not reacting to it. If you do a 10%, 20%, 25% off, consumers just aren't reacting to that the way they used to. And again, I think that's because everything's always on sale on Amazon. There's always at least a 5 or 10% discount, and consumers have caught on.
Interesting. I wanted to maybe dig into that just a hair more of just they don't like the flash sales. I thought that was the thing that was driving much of the traffic was these Prime days and hey, we're going to make a big deal about this certain day to really drive traffic.
So it's definitely helping Amazon. I mean, their sales on Prime Day are doing pretty good, but they're also spending so much time and money promoting those days. So when you, excuse me, look at the actual profitability, it's not that much greater. And I think you can get away with that when you're Amazon, but when you're a mid-market, mid-sized e-commerce brand where they're already kind of trying to decide how much do I trust you, it's just harder to get away with. The way to drive, if you want to do a quick short-term thing to drive more traffic and sales, doing like limited edition drops is working a lot better than doing like a sudden flash sale of we're going to give you 50% off this hour only. So
Interesting. No, that's great. Great to know. Well, all right. Next up, we got to talk about it. This crazy election that's coming up. It's going to be interesting for sure. We'll probably stay out of the red and the blue and all the green in between. So, I guess first up, what's the ad landscape? Because you mentioned that you teased that right at the beginning. The ad landscape was going to be interesting going into the election.
So there have been studies. People went back 4 years, looked at the last presidential election, and saw that there actually is an increase in the ad spend and the ad costs on the major advertising platforms. So obviously Meta, Google, places like that. There's some debate as to how much increase there's going to be in ad spend. Politics aside, I saw a report just yesterday that the Trump campaign is actually ramping back their spending on Meta and the other mainstream social media networks. They're putting their money elsewhere. The Harris campaign is still putting a lot of money into those. But if one side kind of pulls back from the advertising, maybe the costs won't go up as much. But the really interesting thing for me, and this is where I geek out on this stuff, is it's going to take longer to get ads approved because the closer we get to the election, the candidates themselves, but then all the PACs and the super PACs and everybody else that has something to say about the election, daily, hourly, we're going to see new ads being submitted onto the platforms for new things that are coming out. Everyone wants that November surprise that'll put their candidate over the top.
Right.
And what happens is ad approval times will get backed up because they're going to be paying pretty close attention to those political ads. There's going to be more of them. It's going to be harder to get, your average e-commerce brand's ad approved in a reasonable amount of time. So I've seen some marketing directors are actually already prepping their ads for the first couple of weeks in November. They're submitting them to the platforms now for approval so that when they're ready to make them go live, they just activate those campaigns. And I think that is, no matter where you lean on the political spectrum, I think that is just really good planning to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I see your notes here, and kind of the focus is build that ad plan and the campaigns early, get it submitted so it's already approved or tweaked in whatever way it needs to be so that you're ready to roll. Well, let's kind of go into overall strategies for the e-commerce success around this whole time frame.
Oh, I know you don't want to talk about politics more, but I got a little bit more on that. So I do just want to call out that the good news is 20% of people are saying that the election is impacting their holiday budget. It's not anything more than 20%. But there are 43% of consumers that are basically saying they're kind of waiting to see about what they're going to spend, how much they're going to spend. They're probably going to spend the same amount, but they may wait and see what happens with the election. So I think overall, analyzing this year's holiday sales is going to be really interesting and a little bit challenging. The other thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned, in addition to submitting your creatives early, one way to work against and hopefully not get hit as hard by that price increase and the customer acquisition cost increase in November is if you start doing more campaigns in September and October to build a retargeting audience. Because instead of advertising to every American like the political candidates are going to be doing, you can advertise just to your retargeting audience. And lots of times that is going to, if not drive a lower customer acquisition cost, it's at least going to keep your customer acquisition cost from going up as much as it would otherwise.
Perfect. Great ideas. Well, as we close out that, let's get into our the strategies for e-commerce success and kind of Obviously, early and extended promotions, I think, is first up on your ideas. What else?
Well, and with the early and extended promotions, honestly, in the notes and in my analysis, I've said start your discount campaigns in mid-September. I'd start them now. And I think we're going to see a lot of brands basically doing sales and campaigns from Labor Day straight on through to Christmas. And I think that's smart with consumers shopping earlier, looking for discounts. Definitely maintain a consistent level of deals and discounts. You don't have to say all our products are 30% off the whole season. But I would, maybe highlight one line a week or every 2 weeks that's 30% off and things like that. Because, again, consumers are getting a little wary and they're catching on to that whole, oh, we're going to do, one big sale this one day only, and, sales that aren't actually sales and different things like that. So just keeping your campaigns very authentic and consistent is going to be important. And again, I mentioned already, in all the surveys, 30% is the tipping point between a consumer really caring about a discount or not. So use that, obviously test to see if your customers are any different, but use that as a good rule of thumb.
Well, gosh, one more education point for me today. I guess I need to hold out for the 30% discount because I usually am pretty excited if I get the 5 or 10% because usually it's not there, but maybe that's just the stuff I'm buying. Anyway, moving on. Another strategy that I know you always like to talk about is mobile, as well as the optimization of mobile. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, so 81% of consumers plan to shop on mobile this holiday season. That's another record. I am kind of surprised it's not 90%. It seems like everybody does this, but 81%. And then when you look at the numbers and the revenue growth expected, 28% of the revenue growth expected for this holiday season is going to come from mobile. So if your site is not passing core web vitals, if it's not performing the way it should, it's not providing the mobile experience it should, you're going to suffer this holiday season. And it just makes sense because shorter holiday season, people are having to multitask. They are going to be doing a whole lot more with a whole lot less time. So you got to provide that solid mobile experience.
Well, and you got to grab their attention because the political candidates are going to be doing their best to grab your attention on everything else. So, well, in grabbing their attention, how do we target the generational marketing that you're talking about?
Yeah, so there are some big differences between the generations. Even going Gen X to millennials, we'll leave the boomer jokes and boomers aside. Going from Gen X to millennials, I actually learned a new term, even though I am what they call geriatric millennial, that Gen Z and millennials are significant self-gifters, which is a really interesting euphemism for buying something for yourself. 39% of Gen Z and millennials are planning on buying themselves gifts for Christmas. When you look at Gen Z specifically, that percentage goes up even higher. And so I think in the past, a lot of marketing campaigns, especially in the e-com world, would be about, buy something for your significant other, buy something for your family. This makes a wonderful gift for someone else. Putting a little self-care, self-gifting spin, especially if you're going after a younger audience, is really going to work well this holiday season.
Interesting. Well, sad to say, folks, we're going to have to mention it for another episode as always. We can't get by without it, and it's so important definitely through this holiday season, whether there's an election or not. How do we leverage AI and the personalization that it can bring?
So yeah, AI-powered recommendations and personalization, and even just something as simple as chatbots, those are becoming table stakes so fast. Consumers just expect those. But again, in a compressed holiday shopping season, when you're competing against all the political candidates for your consumers' attention, you need to shorten the path to purchase. You need to make it so much easier for them to buy. And personalizing your site using AI is a great way to do that, providing a chatbot experience. I was actually on a security cameras company's website the other day. They have an amazing chatbot, which kind of a random product to have a great chatbot, but literally I could go in and just ask it whatever I needed to, and it had been trained on all the product data. And so very quickly I was able to narrow down to, hey, this actually would be a good product for what I was looking for.
That's great to have. Well, last but not least, we got all this shopping. We're doing all this prep. We're bringing in our marketing early. We're using AI to get everybody's the right people to the attention. Now we got to get the products there. So how do we plan for that, Josh?
The good news is supply chain disruptions from the pandemic seem, knock on wood
As
here,
we knock on wood, yeah.
seem to have finally calmed down. Most brands have said that their supply chain is in pretty good shape. They don't expect any major issues. Their inventory levels are right where they want it to be. I would still recommend anticipating potential disruptions. Again, with a shorter shopping season, if that product's out of stock when they go to your store or go to your website, they're not going to wait for you to get it back in stock. They're going to go somewhere else. So definitely monitor your inventory closely. And this is where I always every year plug buy online, pick up in store, and curbside pickup. Those are always huge, and that is what people want, especially the last few days before Christmas. The interesting kind of counterpoint to that, so sustainability has become even bigger this year. So last year, 61% of consumers said that sustainability influenced where they would buy, whether it was online or in store. This year, almost 80% are considering sustainability.
Interesting.
So before, a lot of brands I work with would run, especially big gifting brands, they would run either free or reduced cost express shipping the couple of days before Christmas, because that was the only way to compete against the local stores, is by saying, hey, you can still get it in time. Well, now more and more consumers are thinking, wait, that express package, it's going to go on a jet, it's going to have carbon emissions. If I just drive to my local store, this might actually be a better purchase for the environment. And so more and more brands are looking at offering carbon offsetting on their express shipping, and even making that part of their marketing campaign, kind of the week of Christmas, of saying, hey, we're doing discounted express shipping and we're going to pay for the carbon offset on it.
Interesting. Not something I would have thought of for sure. Well, as we kind of wrap all this up, we've got the election coming up that's going to be crazy. Shopping has already started, and if it hasn't, by gosh, started as soon as you hear this, because it's on. So Josh, what would be maybe your 2 or 3 kind of key takeaways that you want to make sure people remember?
I think the biggest thing, and I am already tired of saying this, hopefully you're not tired of hearing it, is get your core web vitals in check. Those are those performance metrics. We talked about them a few weeks ago on the show. That is how Google is measuring the user experience on your site. If that is showing up as failed, which there's a free test that Google has online that you can go to, that's showing up as failed, you got to get that fixed fast, because mobile is such a big part of this year, and that's going to influence not only your mobile conversion rate, but your search engine rankings. That will influence a lot. Beyond that, just know that, and I feel like we've been saying this for a few years now, post-pandemic, but know that this year isn't going to be like last year, just because it's a shorter season and there's an election. So if your projections are just based on take last year and add 9% to each day, you might want to go revisit those.
So let me ask you one last question to close this out. Where do you think there could be a loss, or things that might go really sideways for an e-commerce brand over this holiday, based on the short time frame and the election?
I think the biggest risk would be, if you've covered core web vitals, you've covered all that, either getting your inventory wrong or getting your discounting wrong, and just not having the right product in stock at the right discount level. Because if you, and again, it's like that 30% mark. If your consumers want 30% and you offer 25% and then nobody buys, you're going to miss your projections.
All right, you heard it here first. Well, as always, thank you so much. We encourage you to subscribe. Definitely check out Joshua Warren on LinkedIn. You can get all of the great information, and even some time and answers from him. So with that, we thank you as always and wish you the best.